This is Amanda Dawn Christie telling you that if you're interested in radio, AM, FM, shortwave, amateur radio, pirate broadcasting, and more, you won't want to miss the International Radio Report every Sunday morning at 10:30 on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal and online at ckut.ca.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, December the 1st, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. We're here every Sunday morning with 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. My name's Sheldon. The other voice you'll hear is Gilles. We have a good mix of material for you again this week. We thank you for any contributions you've passed along as well. We have a few people who've sent along some stories for us this week. Always do appreciate that. We'll give you all of our contact information at the end of today's show. So, Gilles, you'll start things off today with a local story that we thank Normand Martel in Montreal for passing along to us.
Yeah, we have news of a radio personality that was on 98.5, Pierre-Yves McSween. He's an accountant that talks about usually the economy and like putting the economy in context, an easy context for everybody to understand. And he had lost his job on 98.5, and now he will be back on Radio-Canada, the Ici Première. He used to be there before he went to 98.5, but now he's going to be back on the morning show, Tout un matin, a show with Patrick Masbourian. And he will also be in the afternoons on Monday, with a show from 3 to 6 p.m. From Annie Desrochers. C'est encore mieux l'après-midi. And so he's back at the CBC, I guess at Radio-Canada, and hope that things go well, talking, as always, about the economy.
It's a hot topic all the time, so convenient of him to land back where he was previously. Doesn't happen often that somebody leaves somewhere, goes somewhere else, and then comes back to where they left.
Yeah.
So it's kind of unique there. So thanks to Normand for passing that story along. Our next story comes to us via Richard Cuff down in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We thank him for sending this along. Interesting, an American telling us a story about something going on in Canada. We like that. The story is by Adam Jacobson of Radio and Television Business Report. The headline is CRTC comment seeks input on AM/FM rule modernization. The Canadian Association of Broadcasters has been clamoring for it. The nation's ownership groups have lamented how their collective business has been hurt by it. And the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission rules regarding AM/FM radio processes, including mandatory Canadian content rules as it pertains to recorded music, have been under fire from fiscally challenged publicly traded companies that have been selling properties or, in some cases, shutting down stations altogether. It now appears the CRTC is ready to consider a modernization of radio processes. Indeed, a deadline for submissions of interventions has been set for January 20th, 2025, with reply comments due on February the 4th, 2025, in a broadcasting notice of consultation designed to give Canada's broadcasting regulatory body a clear indication of what to do with respect to its rules governing radio. Radio is in a period of transition, the CRTC acknowledges, yet, it adds, despite the challenges faced by a part of the industry, radio remains very important for entertaining, informing, discovering new artists, and ensuring that local voices are heard, offering a proximity that, as of yet, has no real alternative. So, more specifically, this proceeding will allow the CRTC to determine the best ways to do the following. Reduce the barriers to entry for new radio operators, potentially through broad-banded exemption orders. Reduce reporting requirements, if applicable, while ensuring support for Canadian and Indigenous creators. Review the current compliance measures and introduce new measures, including new incentive measures. Streamline processes to harmonize them with requirements where possible. promote the sustainability of broadcasters, especially in underserved markets, identify barriers faced by equity-deserving groups obtaining broadcast licenses and ways these barriers could be removed. To this end, the CRTC solicits comments on the following issues: license terms, potential exemption orders, streamlining certain licensing processes, current non-compliance measures, and the possibility of implementing new compliance measures, including incentives, the license renewal process. The comments would largely be based on CRTC conclusions on a preliminary basis of the following options, with some proposals being mutually exclusive: indeterminate license terms for all stations, regardless of type of license; indeterminate license terms for all AM radio stations; 20-year license terms for community and campus radio stations; 15-year license terms for commercial radio stations with annual revenues of less than $2 million, and 10-year license terms for commercial radio stations with annual revenues of more than $2 million. A flurry of potential exemption orders are also being considered by the CRTC. Lastly, there is an AM radio consideration. In recent years, many AM stations have gone off the air, the CRTC says. These stations, like many FM stations, have generally experienced lower audiences and revenues in recent years. In addition, their operating costs are higher than for FM stations. For these reasons, the Commission is seeking comments on the possibility of providing AM stations with additional flexibility. So this sounds like something that they should have been doing a long time ago, but for some reason have just kept running the same play over and over and over. This time it looks like they're going to seriously look at making changes that, in the long run, I think sound like it will make things easier for radio stations, easier for people to get new broadcasting licenses, and easing up on some of the terms and proof of performance that they have to abide by.
You know, it's important to revisit the regulations from time to time. We talk about how difficult it is, all that it takes, all the effort, all the administration, and all the paperwork, and the money, and you're still not on the air, and it takes a long time before you get on the air. It needs to be simplified, make things easier for anyone that maybe wants to have, say, they're talking about AM radio station flexibility. How about, maybe somebody somewhere would like to either buy some existing station that might be going away soon, or, maybe having his own. There's new ways today with smaller antennas to be on the air on AM.
The one thing that they did say in this article that they're not going to touch, though, is Canadian content regulations. Personally, I think that's a good thing. I think the Canadian content regulations have done really good things for Canadian artists in the past and will continue to do so. So that's one thing that some of the stations might not be too pleased with that, but it looks like they are going to stick to their guns when it comes to that requirement, at least. But, there's a lot of work involved in renewing licenses sometimes, too. And if they're going to extend the license renewal periods, that will be beneficial to the stations as well. Less administrative work and cost involved in doing that each time your renewal process comes up.
In our next story, we have Trump's pick for FCC chair says fighting censorship is the number one priority, by Tom Howell Jr., from the Washington Times. President-elect Donald Trump's pick to chair the Federal Communication Commission said Monday he wants to smash the censorship cartel, to rebuild trust in media sources, and ensure broadcasters serve the public interest. Brendan Carr, a senior Republican commissioner at the FCC, called it his number one priority, reflecting concerns within the GOP that social media and mainstream outlets, too, often align with liberal interests and suppress conservative ones. Americans have lived under an unprecedented surge in censorship over the last couple of years, and we have to work together to smash the censorship cartel, Mr. Carr told Fox Business Network's Mornings with Maria. In that vein, Mr. Carr recently called on 4 big tech giants in a letter to detail their use of NewsGuard, which works to sideline some non-legacy media by labeling their news reports misinformation. He is threatening the platform with revocation of their federally granted immunity against content-based lawsuits. NewsGuard is an American company that gives clients what it calls reliability ratings and scores for news and information websites. Scores range from 0 to 100 based on 9 apolitical journalistic criteria that analyze credibility and transparency. In a lengthy statement, NewsGuard CEO Gordon Krovitz said Mr. Carr's letter makes clear he was misled by relying on false reports from outlets that earn low credibility scores from NewsGuard. Much of the concern about censorship was fueled by Democratic efforts to get social media platforms to remove or downplay content that questioned aspects of the COVID-19 response or whether the coronavirus was leaked from a lab in China. Also Monday, Mr. Carr pledged to scrutinize any telecommunications network with ties to Communist China, citing national security concerns. He said he plans to take a very hard look at a deal that gives 200 radio stations to a group backed by George Soros, a liberal mega-donor, while signaling more even-handed treatment for billionaire Elon Musk, the entrepreneur who heavily backed Mr. Trump and is advising him on the transition. For too long, in this government, particularly over the last couple of years, your last name dictated how the government treated you, Mr. Carr said. If your last name was Soros, well, the commission bent over backwards and gave you a special, unprecedented commission-level shortcut to buy 200 radio stations. If your last name was Musk, well, then you lost $800 million contracts that you lawfully got. Everybody now is going to get a fair shake going forward. The FCC is an independent agency subject to oversight from Congress. It has a 5-member commission with a 3-2 Democratic majority, though that will change next year when Mr. Trump gets to appoint a new member. Some Trump critics fear the president-elect will attempt to increase his way over media outlets that are unfriendly to him. I want to make sure that I understand 100% President Trump's agenda, Mr. Carr said on Monday. After all, when it comes to his administration, the American people voted for him and voted for his agenda. It's kind of a complex issue. It's an even more complex issue when you have to deal with what is fairness, what is being said, is what censorship is exactly. It depends on a lot of things, and sometimes on personal views, political views, on money, and it's a tough one here because what will be the direction of the FCC from there?
Yeah, what one person determines to be okay, another person might consider offensive or should be censored. It's a real gray area. Every time the presidency changes hands, if it goes from Republican to Democrat or vice versa, there are going to be changes, obviously. This time around, there might be some things that are a little more dramatic than what we've seen in the past. So it's going to be a wait and see. Just the headline alone, though, saying that his number one priority is censorship, kind of makes you a little bit nervous, I would think.
Yeah, definitely.
Our next story is coming to us via Politico. New York City first responders turn up the volume on the AM radio bill blitz. And we've been following this story for quite some time now about the AM radios in vehicles, or the lack of same. Current and former heads of the New York Police Department and the New York Fire Department are pressing Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to take up legislation to prevent automakers from dropping AM radios from cars before the end of the year. Their plea comes at a pivotal moment in the fight over the future of AM radios in cars. An odd bedfellows coalition, including media conglomerates, conservative talk radio stars, and first responders, have been waging a years-long battle against automakers and the tech industry after several major automakers began phasing AM radios out of their electric vehicles over concerns of interference with the car's motors. The auto and tech industries have blasted the AM for Every Vehicle Act, which would require AM radios to be included in all new cars at no cost, as a government mandate that runs against free market principles. Meanwhile, appeals to AM radio's nostalgia and its foundational role in the world of talk radio have taken a back seat to what supporters say is the main impetus for the bill, preserving AM radio's role in emergency communications. As we reflect on the recent anniversaries of both 9/11 and Superstorm Sandy, we are reminded of just how important AM radio was to informing the citizenry during and in the days after these crises, and how the public safety would be jeopardized in future events without access to AM signals, FDNY Commissioner Robert Tucker, NYPD Chief of Patrol John Schell, and 18 other New York law enforcement leaders wrote in a letter to Schumer today. They also pointed to more recent examples of how AM radio is often the only communications platform available during disasters like the hurricanes that walloped the Southeast earlier this fall and last year's wildfires in Maui. The bill's supporters note that it has a filibuster-proof majority of sponsors in the Senate. Over in the House, Speaker Mike Johnson is among the sponsors of a companion bill. In addition to those broad levels of support, there's another big reason the issue has taken on more urgency since Donald Trump's election. Tesla, whose CEO Elon Musk has become a key member of Trump's inner circle, is one of the companies that began eliminating AM radios in its cars. The company has spent nearly $1.7 million on lobbying since the start of 2023, and the AM radio bill is the most frequently mentioned piece of legislation in its lobbying disclosures over the past 2 years, according to Open Secrets. So we have new players in the game now that for one reason or another, some will be pro AM radios in the vehicles and others, for obvious reasons, don't want them there. I don't know where it's all going to end. They were trying to get this law passed before Inauguration Day on January 20th. Whether that will happen or not, I think things are somewhat stalled in the U.S. government right now. So I'm not sure. It may take a swing in the opposite direction once we get into the new year, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And we can see that some of the important people in the government are not necessarily going to want to help this go through. So it almost sounds like if there was a way to pass this, now was the time, because I think it's going to get complicated in the future. So what's happening with our sun? So our sun is quite active. It had a few flares. It had a few coronal mass ejections, but none that made an impact to create geomagnetic storms. So basically this week was amazing in propagation. Solar flux was higher than the previous weeks. So these conditions are going to continue, and there's a lot of signals. There's a lot of stuff. If you don't have too much noise, you'll be amazed at how good the propagation is lately. Sunspot number 149. The radio sun solar flux is 214. What might be the problem for the week ahead? Well, we still have a sunspot 3906. That's a sunspot that it's quite active, and it's actually got this weird magnetic field that is ready for X-class solar flares. So that could be what will change our propagation for the week. For the rest of it, when it's quiet, it's going to stay extremely good. And the only way you can really witness all of this is to turn on a radio and listen.
This is Janice of Dorval. The International Radio Report presents 30 minutes of news, information, and commentary on developments in the world of radio every Sunday morning at 10:30 on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal and online at ckut.ca.
And our next story, Westwood 1 reboots Country Nights. This is via Ramp Radio and Music Pros. Cumulus Media's Westwood One announced the impending launch of a new 5-hour nighttime country music radio show, Country Nights Live with Bev Rainey. Hosted by award-winning country radio personality Bev Rainey, will broadcast live from Nashville and debut on Tuesday, December 31st in markets across the U.S. and is available 7 days a week, airing 7 p.m. to midnight. Country Nights Live with Bev Rainey will replace Nights with Elena, as it was announced that Elena Smith is stepping down as host, along with producer Jackie Stevens. This marks the second major change Cumulus Westwood One has announced in its syndicated programming for 2025, following the news that KPLX Dallas morning co-host Ryan Fox will replace 18-year veteran Kix Brooks as host of American Country Countdown in January. So, country music. If you like country music, I guess you'll find this interesting.
Yeah, Westwood One's a big network, and there are many, many stations that'll carry that programming, particularly in the late night hours like that. Those shows are popular. Country music is huge in the United States right now. So check around your area if you're into country music. Check for the stations that might be carrying that show in your local area. We have something interesting going to take place on shortwave, and this comes from the Deutsche Amateur Radio Club in Germany. They are going to transmit on shortwave using the Wufferton United Kingdom transmitter. For almost 10 years, Radio DARC has used the ORS transmitter in Moorsbrunn near Vienna for its shortwave broadcasts on Sunday mornings. This is now to come to an end at the end of the year, and the facility is being shut down. All attempts to save it have failed, and the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation wants to finally and completely abandon the shortwave business area, which is allegedly no longer in keeping with the times, by December the 31st, 2024. Things seem to be somewhat differently in Wufferton, England, though, about 50 kilometers southwest of Birmingham. The British Broadcasting Company's BBC Broadcasting Complex, which is still there, is operated by its subsidiary Encompass Media and has a total of 10 transmitters and just as many antennas. Radio DARC, or DARC, announces that a new broadcasting contract has been concluded with the shortwave station Wufferton, effective January the 1st, 2025. The corresponding contract negotiations were successful, and DARC General Assembly approved the budget item requested for this purpose in its meeting on November the 16th, 2024. Our program will therefore be heard for the first time on Sunday, January the 5th, 2025, on the previously used frequency, 9670 kilohertz, this time, though, from England. The 125 kilowatt transmission power will be used on a 4/4 curtain antenna pointing 105 degrees towards Germany. With this selection, an effective power of almost 4 megawatts is achieved. The familiar transmission on 6070 in the 49 meter band will continue, and the DARC program will in future come with 10 kilowatt transmission power from channel 292 near Ingolstadt in Bavaria. The continued existence of the association's own radio program on shortwave is thus secured for the time being. We would like to thank the employees of ORS and KG, especially Ernst Vranke, OE3EVA, for their many years of a very benevolent and active support, and wish them all the best for their upcoming retirement. Some bad news and some good news. We know for a fact that the Austrian transmitter site was going to go offline, but a new negotiation contract has been worked out with Wufferton, with the Encompass Media people, to continue this broadcast from the Deutsche Amateur Radio Club.
So we've got Radio Cairo that is asking for reception reports. This is from Mauno Ritola via Glenn Hauser's World of Radio I.O. group. So Radio Cairo asking for reception reports from target areas, and you know what? even if you're not in the target area. I think they'd be very interested in knowing you can hear them. The email is freqmeg@yahoo.com. And so where can you hear Radio Cairo? We're Radio Cairo 9410 in German from 19 to 20 UT, 9410 from in Albanian from 15 to 16, 9440 in English, 2115 to 2245. This is the one we hear in North America quite well. In general, it's just the big problem is their audio is very bad. So it will be a challenge to hear a transmission that you can actually report properly. There's 9470 in Italian from 18 to 19, 9810 in French from 20 to 2115, 9830 in Portuguese from 2215 to 2330, 9885 in Arabic, 2330 to 045, 9890 Russian, 19 to 20, 9900 Spanish, 045 to 02, and 9900 in Turkish from 17 to 19 UTC. So good luck. Usually the signal comes in. For example, here in North America, you will probably get that English signal on 9440. The problem, once again, will remain the audio quality.
Good to see, though, that a shortwave station is at least wanting to know who's hearing them and with what quality. So very important if you're a dedicated shortwave listener and you want to try for any of those broadcasts. We'll post up this list for you. And depending on where you are, you might be able to tune them in and send off a reception report for them.
And one other station that I just reminded me of is Radio Slovakia. This week, I've listened to Radio Slovakia via WRMI. They are asking users to send them how they listen to Slovakia online, on shortwave, because they want to know what is the best way to reach their audience. So Radio Slovakia also kind of wanting to know how you listen to their shows.
All right. If you can help them out, I'm sure they'd all appreciate that. So be an active shortwave listener and make it a two-way communication. Don't just listen to them. Let them know you're listening and give them some feedback.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
Next weekend, we have a couple things, 3 to be exact, coming up. First off, if you're into the difficult to tune and transmit on sometimes 160 meter band, the ARRL, the American Radio Relay League, has their 160 meter band contest, 2200 December 6th to 1600 Zulu December the 8th. The objective is for amateurs worldwide to exchange information with American and Canadian amateurs on the 160 meter band in CW only, though. And that is the 160 meter band, which is way down, just above the AM broadcast band, actually. So give that one a shot.
There's the Pro CW Contest Club Romania that has the Pro CW Contest, 1200 Zulu December 7th, 1159 Zulu December 8th. Bands are 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters in CW.
And finally, the rttycontesting.com group is holding the FT Roundup, 1800 Zulu December 7th to 2359 Zulu December the 8th. The objective is for amateurs worldwide to contact and exchange QSO information with other radio amateurs using FT4 or FT8 modes. The bands 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meter amateur radio bands.
And we're out of time.
That will do it for this week. We promised you our contact info. It is email, radioreport@yahoo.com. You can listen to our show live streaming or archived at ckut.ca here in Montreal on the web. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report. We welcome Michel Frémy from Radio Magazine, one of the French publications out there on the web. Our YouTube channel where you can listen to our show and previous shows, youtube.com/@IRR. We invite you to subscribe. And our X account at IRRCKUT. you can follow us there. Thanks for tuning in this week. We hope to have you back again next Sunday morning at 10:30 Eastern, 15:30 UTC, with our next edition of the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.